I still feel the heat crawling up my neck when I think about that night. It was Christmas Eve, the first one my family had all been together for in years, and it ended with my grandfather's voice cutting through the laughter like a knife. "So, how's the $480,000 house I bought you, kiddo?" he said. Everyone went silent. My fork clinked against the plate, my stomach dropped, and I laughed nervously, thinking he must have mixed me up with someone else. But he wasn't joking. He looked right at me, smiling the proud smile he always had when he thought he'd done something good for his grandkids. The problem was I didn't own a house. I was still renting a tiny one-bedroom apartment, working double shifts at the coffee shop and driving Uber at night just to stay afloat. I said, Grandpa, I think you've got me confused. I don't have a house." And that's when the air in the room shifted. My mom's face went white. My dad looked down at his plate. My older brother, Eric, suddenly started clearing dishes even though dinner wasn't over. Grandpa's smile faded. "What do you mean?" "I wired the money to your parents last year. They said you'd found the perfect place." It took me a second to process what he said. My brain couldn't connect the words. "You wired money?" I asked. "To Mom and Dad? For me?" He nodded. "Of course. I wanted you to have a fresh start. After your breakup, you needed some stability." I froze. My breakup had been awful, 5 years with my ex, and it ended when I found out he'd been seeing someone else. I was wrecked. My parents knew I'd been struggling, but they hadn't offered much help, emotionally or financially. They told me to stand on my own 2 feet. So the idea that Grandpa had tried to help me, that he'd given money meant for me, and I never saw a penny of it, it made something inside me crack open. I turned to my mom. "What's he talking about?" I asked quietly. She didn't answer. She just pressed her lips together. My dad cleared his throat and said, "It was a misunderstanding. We were going to tell you." "Tell me what?" I demanded. My voice was shaking now. I could feel everyone's eyes on me. Eric muttered something under his breath and left the table. Grandpa frowned. "Misunderstanding?" "I wired $480,000. I confirmed it with the bank. You said you were closing that week." That's when my mom stood up, her voice sharp. "Dad, please. Not now." But it was too late. The damage was done. Grandpa pushed his chair back, his voice rising. "You told me she'd already moved in. I asked for pictures. You sent me some." The room erupted. My mom started crying. My dad kept saying we were going to handle it, and I just sat there, numb. I didn't even know what to say. Grandpa had given them nearly $500,000 to buy me a house, and they had used it for what? I finally said, "Where's the money?" My dad shot me a look that I'll never forget. Part guilt, part anger. "It's complicated," he said. "We had some financial issues. Your brother's business was struggling. We thought." I stood up. "You what?" He didn't finish. My mom just kept crying, saying they were going to make it right. That was the moment everything I thought I knew about my family shattered. I left the table. Grandpa called after me, but I couldn't even turn around. I grabbed my coat and walked out into the cold December night, my heart pounding so hard I could barely breathe. That night, I sat in my car for an hour before I drove home. My phone kept buzzing, calls from my parents, Eric, even my aunt, but I didn't answer any of them. I just sat there, staring out the windshield at the snow, feeling like my whole life had been one long con. The next morning, I called Grandpa. His voice broke the second he heard mine. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," he said. "I thought you knew. I wanted to surprise you. I can't believe they didn't tell you." He told me everything. How he'd sold some of his stocks to help me buy a house after my breakup. How my parents had insisted they'd handle the details because I was too emotional at the time. How they'd sent him pictures of a random house they said I'd bought. He even showed me the email they'd sent, with photos taken from a real estate listing. I felt sick. My parents, my own parents, had lied to him, to me, to everyone. They'd taken his money and used it for themselves or for Eric. I didn't know which, and I didn't even care at that point. All I knew was they'd stolen from their own daughter and from the man who loved them enough to trust them with that much money. I went to their house that night. My mom answered the door, her eyes red and puffy. "We can fix this," she said before I even spoke. "We just need time." "Fix what?" I asked. "You stole from me. You stole from Grandpa." She shook her head. "We didn't steal. We borrowed. Eric's company was in trouble. Your father thought it would be temporary." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You used my house money to bail out Eric?" "He's your brother," she said, like that justified everything. "He was going to lose everything." I laughed. I actually laughed, this ugly, broken laugh that sounded nothing like me. "And you thought I'd just what?" "Never find out." She said they'd planned to repay it eventually, but when the business went under, everything spiraled. They'd been hiding it from Grandpa ever since. I left before my dad got home. I didn't want to see him. I couldn't. The next day, Grandpa called again. He told me he was talking to his lawyer. He said he was going to make things right. I begged him not to, he's in his 80s, and I didn't want him to deal with that kind of stress, but he wouldn't back down. Over the next few weeks, everything came out. Grandpa confronted my parents directly. They admitted they'd taken the money, though they still called it borrowing. Eric tried to defend them, saying he'd pay me back when he got back on his feet. But I didn't want their money. I wanted the truth. By February, Grandpa had cut them off financially. He changed his will, too. I didn't ask for that, but he told me he couldn't trust them anymore. My parents blamed me for that. They said I'd turned him against them. But I didn't have to do anything. They did that all by themselves. I started therapy after that. The betrayal messed me up more than I expected. I kept replaying that dinner in my head, the way my mom's face froze when Grandpa asked that question, the way everyone went quiet. It felt like a movie scene, except it was my life. A few months later, Grandpa helped me buy a small condo, not a gift this time, a loan with paperwork and everything. He said he didn't want me to ever feel like I owed anyone anything again. I cried signing those papers. I haven't spoken to my parents since spring. Eric texted a few times, mostly guilt-tripping me, saying families shouldn't fight over money. I didn't respond. I guess he and my parents still live in the big house Grandpa's money was supposed to buy me. Last Christmas, Grandpa and I had dinner together, just the two of us. He said he still couldn't believe what happened, but he was proud of me for standing up for myself. I told him I wished he'd never given anyone that money in the first place. Not because I wanted it, but because it tore everything apart. He looked at me and said, "No, sweetheart. They tore it apart. You just saw it for what it really was." Sometimes I still miss my parents. Or at least I miss who I thought they were. It's strange to grieve people who are still alive, but that's what it feels like. I'm learning that love and trust aren't the same thing. That Christmas dinner,